We are all driven by an innate desire, a longing for something beyond ourselves. It is as if there is an invisible force drawing us towards significance. This yearning is often misunderstood or misdirected. Many seek glory through fame, recognition, or the pursuit of personal achievement. But this, dear friends, is not the glory we are called to. The true weight of glory lies in a much deeper, spiritual calling that points us toward God, and it is here we must find our purpose. First, consider what we mean by glory in our world. It is often associated with external accomplishments, wealth, power, fame. We may look at these things and think, this is glory. However, this type of glory is fleeting, hollow, and ultimately unsatisfying. The glory we are meant to pursue is not a shallow reflection of human achievement, but a deep, eternal truth, the glory of God, who created us with purpose and intention. This brings us to the matter of purpose. We were not created to wander aimlessly or to simply achieve the passing goals of the day. We were made with a higher purpose, a calling to align our lives with the divine plan. This plan is one of eternal significance, and our purpose is found not in personal ambition, but in serving God, embracing His will, and reflecting His glory in the world. We are created not for transient success, but for the eternal joy that comes from fulfilling our divine calling. But this path to glory is not without struggle. It is important to acknowledge that the journey is fraught with challenges. We are imperfect beings, and we often miss the mark. In our weakness, we fail to fully live up to our potential. Yet this is where grace enters the story. The glory we seek is not one we can achieve by our own strength or merit. It is through God's mercy and redemption that we are restored to our true purpose. It is not about striving in our own power, but surrendering to God's transformative grace, which lifts us to our full potential. As we walk this journey, we must remember that it is a pilgrimage, not a sprint. The pursuit of glory in God's eyes requires patience, faith, and perseverance. Life is a gradual unfolding of our true selves, a continual return to God's calling. The purpose we are meant to find is not always immediately evident. It is often a process of discovery, of refining, of trusting God with every step. The weight of glory is heavy, yes, but it is the weight that carries us toward fulfillment and peace. The search for purpose is one of the most fundamental human experiences. Throughout history, people have sought to answer the same deep questions. Why am I here? What is the meaning of life? This inherent yearning for purpose is not something unique to one culture or time period, but a universal thread that runs through the fabric of humanity. It transcends differences in race, religion, and background, suggesting that there is something deeply embedded in the human condition that drives us to seek purpose beyond our immediate circumstances. In the contemporary world, this quest for meaning is often linked to personal achievement and success. Many are taught from a young age that purpose is something to be earned through wealth, career progression, recognition, or fame. The prevailing message in society is that fulfillment comes from the attainment of external goals and the validation of one's self-worth by others. But this often leaves individuals feeling empty. Achievements, while rewarding in the moment, are fleeting and fail to address the deeper, more existential needs of the soul. When one reaches the pinnacle of worldly success, it is common to feel a sense of hollowness, a recognition that what was thought to be the source of meaning and purpose was, in fact, only a temporary distraction. This emptiness arises because the essence of purpose is not rooted in transient accomplishments, but in a deeper connection to something eternal. The quest for meaning is not fulfilled by looking outward, but inward and upward to the very source of existence. The true purpose of life, then, is not a matter of personal ambition or worldly recognition. It is tied to something much greater than the individual. It lies in understanding our place within the larger framework of creation and aligning our lives with the divine plan. The idea of a higher, divine purpose is not a new one. Throughout history, many spiritual and religious traditions have emphasized the importance of recognizing one's purpose as part of a greater cosmic order. In this view, human beings are not isolated individuals struggling alone to carve out their own purpose. Instead, we are part of a vast interconnected tapestry woven by the Creator. Our lives are meant to reflect the values of love, justice, compassion, and service. The human desire for purpose is therefore not a random or insignificant urge. It is an echo of something much larger, the divine calling to live in accordance with a higher will. In the Christian tradition, for instance, purpose is closely tied to the concept of God's plan for each individual. The Bible teaches that every person is uniquely created with specific gifts, talents, and capacities, not merely for personal gain, but to serve a higher purpose. This purpose, according to Christian belief, is not about achieving greatness on one's own, but about aligning one's life with God's will, loving others, and participating in the ongoing work of redemption. The Apostle Paul, in his letters, repeatedly encourages believers to understand their purpose in terms of their relationship with God and how they can contribute to the well-being of others. This view shifts the focus from individual self-interest to a communal and divine-oriented purpose. The concept of purpose in many Eastern philosophies emphasizes alignment with a greater cosmic order. Whether through the Hindu idea of Dharma, the Buddhist concept of right livelihood, or the Taoist belief in harmony with the Tao, the search for purpose is seen as the search for alignment with a greater, universal truth. In these traditions, purpose is not an isolated goal to be achieved, but a state of being in which one lives in accordance with universal principles of righteousness, compassion, and balance. Despite these traditions' shared emphasis on a divine or cosmic purpose, the modern secular world often dismisses the idea of a higher plan or purpose. In a society dominated by scientific materialism, purpose is often relegated to a subjective, human-constructed concept, something that each person must create for themselves. This view tends to emphasize individualism, personal freedom, and the idea that we are the architects of our own purpose. While these values have their merits, they can lead to a sense of isolation and disillusionment. When purpose is seen solely as a personal achievement or self-created construct, it can become something fragile and unstable, built upon shifting desires or external circumstances. In contrast, the idea that our purpose is given, not self-made, offers a deeper sense of security and fulfillment. It is rooted not in our limited understanding or fleeting desires, but in a relationship with the divine, whose wisdom and guidance transcend time and place. This deeper sense of purpose, then, is not something we create or discover by force of will or individual effort. It is something revealed through the process of relationship, first and foremost, our relationship with God. As we come to know and understand the divine plan for our lives, we begin to realize that our purpose is not about acquiring worldly success or recognition. Instead, it is about aligning our lives with God's will, living in service to others, and being part of a larger divine narrative that stretches beyond the confines of time and space. The search for purpose is not a mere philosophical or intellectual exercise. It is a deeply existential journey. It involves the soul's quest for meaning, fulfillment, and connection with something greater than oneself. While society may encourage us to seek meaning through achievement, it is only when we look beyond the self and toward God that we begin to truly discover the purpose for which we were created. This purpose offers not only a sense of direction, but a deep and lasting peace that transcends the temporary pleasures of the world. The concept of glory has long been a subject of fascination and contemplation. In the world, we often associate glory with visible achievements, winning accolades, gaining recognition, or attaining status. This is the glory that the world values, the fleeting kind that can be obtained through hard work, cleverness, or sheer luck. It is a glory that comes with the applause of others, a public acknowledgement of one's superiority or accomplishment. Yet, while this type of glory may satisfy the ego in the moment, it fails to provide lasting fulfillment. It is a surface-level glory, one that eventually fades with time and can leave a person wondering if there was something more substantial to strive for. The true glory, however, is something altogether different. It is not concerned with the temporary recognition of human achievement, but with an eternal weight, something far beyond the confines of earthly accomplishments. This deeper, more profound glory is rooted in the diviner glory that is intrinsic to God and can only be shared through a genuine relationship with Him. This glory is not about the spotlight shining on an individual, but about that individual's connection to something greater than themselves. It is a glory that transcends the moment and speaks to the eternal nature of God's plan for creation. When we speak of the weight of glory, we are not referring to a glory that is earned or given based on human merit. Rather, it is a glory that is bestowed upon us as part of God's design for the world. It is a glory that speaks to the very heart of our existence, the reason we were created in the first place. This glory is something intrinsic to our being, a reflection of our relationship with God and the purpose for which we were made. Unlike earthly glory, which is dependent on external validation, the weight of divine glory is independent of the world's approval. It is not something that can be acquired or lost through human effort, but is something that we are called to reflect through our lives. This divine glory, unlike earthly fame, does not concern itself with outward appearances. It is not defined by a person's status, wealth, or power. It transcends these superficial markers and instead focuses on the heart, the inner transformation that occurs when one is aligned with God's purpose. Glory in this sense is not a commodity to be traded or displayed for the world to see, but a profound and hidden reality that shines forth from within. It is the glory of becoming the person God intended us to be, a glory that comes from being faithful to His calling, loving others, and seeking His will in all things. The weight of glory also involves an understanding of our eternal destiny. It is not just a present reality, but something that stretches beyond this life. Earthly glory, as fleeting as it is, may be enjoyed in the here and now, but it ultimately fades with time. Human achievements, no matter how impressive, eventually crumble, and the recognition of men fades into obscurity. However, the glory that comes from God endures forever. It is a glory that is not limited to the boundaries of human existence, but is connected to our eternal inheritance. This eternal dimension of glory gives it its weight and significance. It is a glory that cannot be stolen or diminished by time, a glory that remains intact through the passage of history and beyond the limits of human experience. This glory is not something that is for the individual alone. It is part of a larger, cosmic reality tied to the redemption of the whole creation. God's glory is manifest not only in the individual, but in the restoration of the world itself. The glory that we seek is not an isolated glory, but one that is shared with others. When we live in accordance with God's purpose, when we align our lives with His plan, we become part of a greater story, a story that is unfolding throughout history, a story that is leading toward the ultimate fulfillment of God's will. This understanding transforms the way we view our individual lives. We are not simply striving for personal recognition or accomplishment, but are participating in a much larger work that has eternal significance. The weight of glory also highlights the role of humility. Unlike earthly glory, which often inflates the ego and fosters pride, the true weight of glory calls us to humility. It is a glory that acknowledges that we are nothing without God, and that all our achievements are only made possible by His grace. Humility becomes the key to experiencing this true glory. It is the recognition that glory is not something we can claim for ourselves, but something we receive as a gift from God. It is a glory that is rooted in surrendering our will to God's and allowing His glory to shine through us. In this way, the more we decrease, the more God's glory can increase in our lives. The weight of glory is found not in lifting ourselves up, but in lowering ourselves before God and allowing His greatness to be reflected in us. The weight of glory is not something we need to wait for after death, but something that we can begin to experience in the present. While the fullness of God's glory will be revealed in the future, there is a tangible aspect of it that we can encounter in the here and now. As we align ourselves with God's will and live in accordance with His purpose, we begin to reflect His glory in our own lives. This glory is not just a distant hope, but a present reality, available to those who walk in faith and obedience. The more we grow in our relationship with God, the more we experience the weight of His glory, a glory that fills our lives with meaning and transforms the way we view the world around us. Human imperfection is a central theme in the journey to finding our true purpose. The very fact that we are imperfect beings presents both a challenge and an opportunity in the pursuit of meaning and glory. As we strive to live up to the calling we are given, we inevitably fall short, experiencing failure, frustration, and a sense of inadequacy. It is in this recognition of our imperfection that the depth of our need for redemption becomes clear. Without the understanding that we are flawed, it is difficult to fully grasp the extent of God's grace and the transformative power it offers. Our imperfection manifests itself in many ways. At times it is seen in moral failings, choices that reflect a desire to do what is right, yet lead us astray. We fall into patterns of selfishness, pride, and impatience. These behaviors reveal that, despite our best intentions, we are often drawn to things that are contrary to the life we are called to lead. At other times, imperfection is expressed in our inability to reach our potential. We feel the weight of unrealized dreams or talents left dormant because of fear, doubt, or distraction. This sense of failure can be deeply discouraging, leaving us questioning whether we will ever achieve the purpose we were created for. It is crucial to remember that these imperfections are not a sign that we are beyond hope. They are a part of the human condition, reminders of our need for something greater than ourselves. Without this recognition of our limitations, we might never seek the redemption that is available through God. It is through our struggles with imperfection that we come to understand the depth of grace and the significance of God's intervention in our lives. If we were already perfect, there would be no need for redemption. But because we are imperfect, we are drawn to the God who promises to restore us, to make us whole, and to help us realize our true purpose. In this sense, imperfection is not an obstacle to finding our purpose, but a necessary part of the journey. It is precisely because we are broken that we can experience the power of redemption. The story of salvation is one in which God works in and through our imperfections to reveal His glory. The Apostle Paul writes in 2 Corinthians that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. Our limitations, instead of disqualifying us from fulfilling our purpose, provide the very context in which God's grace can shine most brightly. When we recognize that we cannot achieve our purpose by our own power, we open ourselves up to receiving the grace and strength that only God can provide. Imperfection, then, becomes a key part of our transformation. Through our flaws and failures, God shapes us into the individuals we were always meant to be. He uses our weaknesses as a way of teaching us humility, patience, and reliance on His wisdom. The process of sanctification, the ongoing transformation that occurs as we grow in our relationship with God, often takes place through the refining fire of imperfection. It is through facing our weaknesses that we learn to depend on God more fully, and in doing so, we grow closer to the person He created us to be. The experience of imperfection reveals the profound need for community. It is in the context of relationships with others that we find the encouragement, accountability, and support necessary to overcome our struggles. No one is meant to walk the path of purpose alone. We were created for fellowship both with God and with one another. The imperfections of others, just like our own, provide opportunities for mutual support and growth. It is in the collective experience of our humanity, our shared weaknesses and struggles, that we begin to see the beauty of grace working through each of us. Recognizing our imperfection allows us to understand the redemptive nature of God's plan more deeply. Redemption is not just about personal salvation, it is about the restoration of all things. Our individual shortcomings are part of a larger narrative of redemption that encompasses all of creation. We are not merely being saved for our own benefit, we are being saved to participate in the greater work of God's restoration of the world. Our transformation, in this sense, is not just an individual pursuit, but part of a cosmic restoration. This deeper understanding helps us to see that our imperfections are not meaningless, but are woven into God's greater purpose for us and for the world. The process of being redeemed from imperfection is also a journey of learning to embrace our limitations. It is easy to become discouraged when we fail, to think that we are unworthy or incapable of fulfilling the purpose we have been given. However, through the lens of grace, our imperfections are seen not as barriers to purpose, but as the very means through which God works His redemptive power. The Apostle Paul, in his letters, speaks often about his own struggles and limitations, yet he emphasizes how God's grace was sufficient to meet him in his weakness. His experiences reveal that our imperfections are not something to be ashamed of, but something to bring before God in trust. When we acknowledge our weaknesses, we make room for God to work in us and through us. The recognition of our imperfection leads us to a deeper understanding of grace. Grace is the undeserved favor that God extends to us despite our failures and flaws. It is through grace that we are able to overcome the barriers created by our imperfections and to fulfill the purpose for which we were created. The imperfections we face in life are not the end of the story, rather, they are the beginning of a new chapter where God's grace enables us to rise above our shortcomings and to step into the fullness of His plan for our lives. The journey toward fulfilling our purpose is not one of perfection, but one of grace that covers our imperfections and leads us to the glory we are destined to experience. The journey of finding purpose is often seen as a pilgrimage, not just in the literal sense of a physical journey to a holy place, but as a metaphor for the ongoing process of self-discovery, spiritual growth, and alignment with God's will. This journey is marked by progress, setbacks, moments of clarity, and periods of uncertainty. It is not a one-time event or a destination that can be reached quickly, rather, it is a lifelong process that requires patience, perseverance, and faith. The idea of life as a pilgrimage suggests that our existence is not random or meaningless, but is guided by a higher purpose, leading us toward the fulfillment of our true calling. In the early stages of this journey, many individuals are unclear about the specific direction they should take. This is not an indication of failure, but a natural part of the human experience. Life's purpose is not something that is handed to us immediately, rather, it unfolds over time as we walk in faith, make decisions, and listen to the guidance of God. This requires a certain level of trust that, even when the path seems uncertain or difficult, God is at work in our lives, guiding us toward our true purpose. This trust is built over time through the experiences of both success and failure, joy and hardship. Each step on the journey reveals more of who we are meant to be and draws us closer to the realization of our divine calling. Faith plays an essential role in this pilgrimage. The path to purpose is not always clear, and often the way forward may seem ambiguous or hidden. It requires the kind of faith that believes in the unseen and the unknown, trusting that God's plan is greater than our understanding. Just as Abraham stepped out in faith without knowing where he was going, or as the Israelites wandered in the desert, trusting that God would provide, so too must we step out in faith, knowing that God will reveal the next step when the time is right. This kind of faith does not rely on certainty or a clear map, but on a deep confidence that God is present, even in moments of confusion or difficulty. The pilgrimage toward purpose involves a continual process of self-awareness. As we walk through life, we encounter various experiences that shape our understanding of who we are and what we are called to do. These experiences, whether they are successes, failures, or challenges, serve as opportunities for growth and refinement. Through reflection, we gain insight into our strengths, weaknesses, desires, and limitations. This process of self-discovery helps us discern where we are most aligned with God's will and where we need to grow. It is through this ongoing process of self-awareness that we come to understand more fully the purpose we are meant to fulfill. One of the key aspects of this journey is the realization that purpose is not always about achieving a specific goal or obtaining a particular status. Instead, it is about alignment with God's greater plan for the world. Life's purpose is found not in the pursuit of self-centered ambitions, but in surrendering our will to God's and participating in the work He is doing in the world. This involves embracing the idea that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. Our journey toward purpose is intertwined with the journey of others, and the fulfillment of our purpose is ultimately bound up in the service of others and the collective good. This perspective shifts the focus of our pilgrimage away from individual achievement and toward a greater communal understanding of purpose. We are not solitary travelers on a path of self-discovery, but pilgrims traveling alongside others, supporting and encouraging one another. This communal aspect of the pilgrimage is vital to our growth. Just as the disciples traveled together and learned from each other, so too are we called to walk together in community. The challenges and joys of life are not meant to be faced alone, rather, we are called to share them with others, learning from their experiences and offering our support when needed. Through this shared journey, we find strength, encouragement, and a deeper understanding of our own purpose.